Okay, it's Pt.4 back for part 4, which has a little serious overtones, but very meaningful. But I don't want to get off too seriously, so I'm going to go to something I should have had in part 3, some little jokes and sayings. Not so much sayings, because I gave you the sayings, but I always keep these handy. Jokes and some of the dumbest things. So let's go with some of the dumbest things. Then we'll go with just the jokes. So this one is a no-brainer. Today it's my husband's birthday. A woman told her friend, "What are you getting for him?" Her friend asked. "Make me an offer," the wife said. Okay. Another beauty of a Rudy. A clear thinking on a cloudy day. Writer Rita Mae Brown. One of the keys to happiness is a bad memory. Whatever. Words of wisdom. UMB. If Thumbelina went to work for a major corporation, they'd pay her only 40% of what a man makes in the job, because she's only 40%. It's big. And if Rapunzel was a management consultant, she could teach a seminar called Out of Our Hair, training women to stop men from climbing all over them as they ascend the corporate ladder. Okay, I think we have time for one more. Clear thinking on a cloudy day. An age-old debate between people who see the glass as half empty and those who manage to see it as half full. I know, I like it half full. Writer Don Marquis offered this perspective. A pessimist is a person who has had to listen to too many optimists. I think that's what we got. Okay, then for the jokes, okay, the good stuff. Let's see what we got here. Why didn't 2 want to date 3? The question that's been asked for eternity. Because he was a little odd. 3 was a little odd. Knock, knock. Did I really write these? Decode. Who's there? Decode. Decode who? Decode in my nose is getting worse. What do you get when a plane flies through a flock of birds? Shredded tweet. And this is kind of cute. Josh came home from school one day and announced excitedly to his mother that he'd gotten a part in the school play. "That's great," his mother said. "Oh, what part did you get?" He said, "I play the husband," Josh said. His mother frowned and said, "Go back tomorrow, tell your teacher you want a speaking part." Okay, moving right along. Dad, was Abraham Lincoln a great man? He was, and mind you, when Lincoln was your age, he was out splitting rails. Son said, "Yes, I know, and when he was your age, he was president of the United States." These kids. Oh, football coach. Yes, timing is everything. Super Bowl. Why is it important? This is the coach. Why is it important not to lose your head during the game? Very important to consider. The jock said, "Because then I have no place to put my helmet." I think we only have time for one more that you would allow me. Battle of the sexes. Michelle came home from an afternoon with her boyfriend looking very unhappy. Her mother asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Arnold asked me to marry him," Michelle replied. Congratulations. Why do you look so upset? Her mother asked. Because he told me now, he said that he's an atheist. He doesn't even believe in hell, said Michelle. Her mother hugged her and said, "That's all right, honey. I think you should marry him, and in between the two of us, we'll show him how wrong he is." I don't know. I don't write it. Okay, positive. And in the interim to my very important message story, if you remember, when we last met on part 3, I said that I couldn't find my poem from 2 years ago for Valentine's Day. And I'm glad I found it. I knew I was going to find it. It's because I really took this stuff seriously. And this is in Joe's lifelong legacy from my newsletters for February of 18. And I would put these pictures together representing this very important holiday for a lot of us. And so I wrote this poem. And it's interesting that I prefaced for that newsletter that there's a lot. This is, remember, it's February 2018. There's still a lot of political turmoil this country is facing as it tries to steer course away from animosity, uncompromise, greater polarization, and meltdown. As I usually do allow to tie in between the 2 months, it is fitting that we look to the middle of the month, February 14th, Valentine's Day, and lots of love going around during this time. So I included Valentine poems, first from last year, and then temper it with some insights from the here and now. So, and there's some sayings on these beautiful things, and it says, "There is nothing on earth more to be prized than true friendship." That was Thomas Aquinas. And God's conversation hearts. These are always cute. You've seen many of those little candy confectionaries. That was good. And so I would put that on. So here's my Valentine's poem from February 2018. So it is 3 years. Okay. All you lovers of life, as well as you lovers of the earth, you caregivers of caring, give of your bounty, and your bounty will always be filled to the brim. So you don't have to worry about half full or half empty. Make sure to give Cupid a big, wide angle shot to land his mark. You never can tell what the results will be. You don't even have to be clever. It will only feel like a little pinch and gives you the warm fuzzies forever. Will only feel like a little pinch and give you the warm fuzzies forever. Willis. So I'm glad I had part 4 to find it. Okay, now this is very important, very meaningful, and I'm glad I can share it. I hope you feel the same way. And I don't want to proselytize because this is not a daily sermon here, but from my life back in college days in New York, I had an opportunity to learn this grace saying for grace. And the story is just like out of Hollywood. I just graduated high school, and I didn't just graduate high school. I was getting my 2-year degree in math science at Nassau Community College, and I was going to graduate, and I'd been dating this girl who was a couple of years younger in another town, Hicksville. You know, we didn't make these names up. You know, I was in Syosset, another beauty. So anyway, we were going together. We thought we were serious, and I was going to stay in New York because my folks were going to head down to Washington. My dad had a job-changing, life-changing, to go to Washington to work with what was then to become the Defense Contract Audit Agency. So that was a decision. My mom and sister, she was in grade school, middle school, and so they were moving to Washington. Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside. And I wanted to stay in New York. And it just so happened that I used to have a landscaping business, mowing lawns. And I had about 11 customers, and I did a pretty good job. And one of the customers was Guy Minetti. They lived about 5 houses down from me, and his wife, Marion, and we called her Aunt Marion. And she was very special in our little group of, kids and, growing up. She always liked to have us come in, and she'd have cooked stuff, and she was a great cook. And matter of fact, one of the fellows that on our block grew up to be a chef. He, learned from her. The point was that when she found out that my folks were moving to Washington, D.C. area, and her son, Peter, was getting married, moving into New York City, she said, "Why don't you stay with us?" Okay, that's a normal situation. Well, except for these circumstances. Aunt Marion was a German war bride, literally and figuratively. And it seemed that after World War II, Europe was decimated, bombing and everything, and Guy Minetti was an engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers, and he was sent to, Germany to help rebuild Germany, and he meets Marion there and her son, young son Peter, and they fell in love, and he decided to take her back. Now, circumstances were that Marion had a very bad home life, and left home. She was like 16 and married a German fellow who later became a German soldier and was subsequently killed in the war. And so there she was with Peter. So Guy, who was the nicest man, imagine, he took her back with him to the States. Took her back with him to the States, and so they lived right down the street. So it's a pretty interesting situation for me to be under their roof, being on my background. But it is what it is, and I stayed with them for a year. It was a beautiful experience, and I can do my studies at Hofstra, and then continue on my relationship up to that point. But what happened was, she was a very extraordinarily good cook, and Guy Minetti, as an engineer in Washington, wish I could edit that out. He was an engineer, and he traveled to New York City every day on the Long Island Railroad, and he'd come back and there'd be a 5-course dinner waiting. And Marion was an excellent cook. So we'd sit down, and there was a couple of things that we protocol. If you dropped any food on the table, you had to put a penny, which things change now, but we'd had to put a penny. We also had to say grace. And in my family circles, I mean, we were thankful. We didn't say it, a specific form of grace at meals. So when it was my turn, I had to come up with something. So I went to see my cantor, Berger. Felix Berger was down the other side of the street. And amazingly enough, he was a Holocaust survivor. He and his wife, both of them, were Holocaust survivors, and they had 2 wonderful kids that would come to visit my dad and me. And when they were living in Syosset down the street. So anyway, I went to see Canterberger. He helped me with my spiritual stuff and my bar mitzvah and music and stuff, and I was in the choir. So I went to see him. I said, Cantor, this is the situation. I'm staying with the Minettis, and we say grace at the meals, and I needed to find something that I could, participate and be part of. So he goes into his library, all these books and everything, and he opens one book and he looks, and then he says, I think this would work. So he shows me this. I said, wow, that'll be very appropriate. And I took that with me. Well, little did I know, my good friends, people out there, it was a game changer. Because I say this little prayer probably maybe a dozen times a day, probably a million times during my life. When I see some good things happening or bad, you see an animal on the road or anything, sunset, sunrise, good things you can appreciate. And it's very short. It's very meaningful. And so at this time, I'm going to share it with you. And this is the message that I presented. Praise be God, whose food we eat, and through whose goodness we live. Very short, to the point. Covers just about everything. So I say it at Grace every meal, plus the last few years I've been embellishing. It's a 2-minute Grace covers all the stuff going on in my life and my appreciation of and my family, loved ones, and friends here and above, and for the gifts, and for good Lord taking care of me, and for peace in the world, and for all the people that are taking care of us and God's creation, keeping it intact. So that's 4. It covers a lot. But this is, praise be God, whose goodness we live. So I think that closes the book on this edition of American Dreamer. And when I started off, I was telling you about the main theme and thread is love is the answer. So that is really what the message is, because I don't think many people would dispute that it's pretty profound. Although when someone said, well, what is the question? Love is the answer. And I think we know it takes so many shapes and forms. It's something that touches on our life and our 5 senses, and that it's all encompassing, and it reaches down to the core and the length and breadth of our being, our feelings. So that's why I thought that song that was composed by Todd Rundgren, Love is the Answer, was pretty powerful and was appropriate. And so this is where we are. It's, our spiritual foundation, comes about in different forms, unexpectedly, unpretentiously. And as always, in one of my most endearing and lifetime experiences, I'm sharing with you how this happens. And I wish I could share with you from your perspective on what some of the touching and telling things has happened to make you what you are. And it's all part of the plan. You're going to have to listen to that song in the next couple of weeks when I learn how to perform it. Well, thank you very much for being with me. I hope we got through some things and picked up some stuff, dropped some stuff off, and we'll go on, go forth and prosper. Be well, stay well. Take a deep breath and be thankful. And then take another deep breath. Keep on. Keep on keeping on and breathing and being strong, and help those around you so Lord knows they have us. Thank you again. It's Pt.4, your friend.